You know, when you think of ancient Greece, what comes to mind? Probably these huge, perfect, white marble temples, right? Philosophers, democracy, the whole deal. But what if I told you that ancient Greece wasn't just one thing? That it was actually two completely different worlds? Well, today we're going to dig into how their buildings tell that story. A tale of two very distinct ages, the Hellenic and the Hellenistic. Okay, let's get into it.
So, yeah, what is the real difference? I mean, they sound almost the same, but trust me, they're not. This question gets right to the heart of how a society's beliefs, its politics, its entire view of the world gets, well, literally built into the stone and marble it leaves behind. One was all about looking inward, striving for this divine perfection. The other? Totally different. It was about looking outward, building massive, epic stuff for people.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll define these two worlds so we're all on the same page. Then, we'll dive into the Hellenic period, what I'm calling the Age of Temples. After that, we hit this massive turning point in history. From there, we'll check out the Age of Theaters that came next, and then finally, we'll see how all of this pretty much paved the way for the Roman Empire.
Okay, Section 1. Greece. One name, two worlds. And this is so important to get right from the start. We are not just talking about a few small changes in style over time. Nope, this was a complete, fundamental shift in what it meant to be Greek.
Think of it this way. These weren't just two chapters in the same history book. They were almost like two totally different books. And the change from Hellenic to Hellenistic, it wasn't this slow, sleepy evolution. It was sudden, it was dramatic, and the whole thing hinged on one single world-changing event.
So let's start with that first era. This is the one that's probably most familiar to you. It's often called Classical Greece or even the Golden Age. This is the Hellenic period. And man, it was absolutely the age of temples.
This really gives you the DNA of the Hellenic era, right? We're talking about a long stretch of time, from 650 all the way to 323 BC. And the main focus, their whole architectural mission, was almost exclusively religious. Their building method was that classic post and lintel system, two big posts holding up a crossbeam. But the main idea, the big philosophy behind it all, idealism. It was all about using math and harmony to create these absolutely perfect buildings for the gods.
And if you want to know how obsessed they were with perfection, get this. The Greeks figured out that if you make a column perfectly straight, our eyes actually trick us into thinking it sags in the middle. So to fix that, they engineered this tiny, almost invisible bulge in the center of the column. It's a technique called entasis. I mean, think about that. They were literally bending reality just to create the illusion of perfection. It's just incredible.
So for centuries, this was the world. This ideal, God-focused architecture was just how things were done. But then, as we're about to see, everything, and I mean everything, changed in what felt like a blink of an eye.
And this is the crazy part. It wasn't an invasion or some huge natural disaster or a slow, crumbling decline. The entire Greek world and its architecture along with it was knocked onto a completely new path, all because one guy died.
And here he is. In 323 BC, Alexander the Great dies. Just look at this timeline. His death isn't just another date on a chart, it is the pivot point. It's the literal dividing line between the old Hellenic world and the brand new, chaotic, and sprawling Hellenistic world that grew out of the pieces of his shattered empire.
So, what happened next? Well, welcome to the Hellenistic period. With Alexander's empire broken up, a whole new kind of society popped up. It was more diverse, way more dramatic, and a lot more focused on the human experience. You could really call this the Age of Theaters.
The biggest thing to notice is the huge shift in focus. They were still building temples, sure, but now they were also putting up massive public buildings, what we call civic structures, huge theaters for plays, amazing libraries for scholarship, and these things called stoas, which were basically public walkways with columns for shopping and debating. The goal wasn't just divine perfection anymore. It was about grandeur, big, theatrical scale, and making impressive spaces for people to live their lives in.
But, this shift to public spectacle didn't mean they just tossed all their old traditions out the window. For example, temples were still typically built to face east, towards the sunrise. It's a small detail, but it shows you that even as their world got bigger and more human-centric, they still held on to that core respect for order and their religious traditions.
So we have these two really different periods, right? But why does this actually matter? Why should we care about this shift? Well, because the story doesn't just end there. The Hellenistic period actually built the bridge to the next great superpower in the ancient world.
This table just lays it all out perfectly, doesn't it? On one side you have Hellenic, religious, idealistic, focused on perfection, all happening before Alexander. On the other side, Hellenistic, civic, emotional, all about theatrical grandeur, all happening after Alexander. It's a clear move from architecture for the gods to architecture for the people.
And this right here is the final, crucial piece of the puzzle. When the Romans started building their empire, they didn't just look back at the Parthenon. No, they looked at the huge, dramatic, public-focused buildings of the Hellenistic world and saw a perfect model for what they wanted to do. That massive scale, that grandeur, that focus on public spaces, that was the architectural DNA that the Hellenistic Greeks passed directly on to Rome.
Which, it leaves us with a pretty interesting question to chew on. The Greeks' architecture changed because their entire world changed. It went from celebrating perfect, divine ideals to staging grand human drama. So, what about us? How might our own public buildings, our city halls, our libraries, our stadiums, change if our society's core values shifted just as dramatically? What story will our buildings end up telling about us 1,000 years from now?